Okay. Good evening, everyone. So this is the first introduction session. We'll try to understand. So what kind of the course content we are going to cover, like in the full stack training. First, we'll start with the core Java, and inside the core Java, what are the concepts we are going to discuss? First, we'll identify, and later we'll discuss about the remaining technologies what we are going to cover here. Okay, so if we observe carefully, first we'll identify the history of this particular Java language, and inside the history, these are all the different features we are going to have. We'll try to cover up the one by one. So the main features we need to understand how this particular object oriented, the OOPS principle is going to work. So if you are familiar with this particular section, you can easily understand if you are trying to write any application or if you're trying to focus on the existing application. For example, if you're trying to develop the migrator application, you can easily understand how, like, what are the functionality they implemented internally, and as well as how the implementation, like how the particular code is going to the execute, the flow of execution, we can easily understand. So now you can think how much the OOPS principles are important here. Okay, and after this we will try to discuss about the variable sections here. What are the different types of variable we are having, and the scope of the each and every variable, how it is going to work internally. And along with this, we'll try to discuss about the arrays concept, like what are the different types of arrays we can use with the help of this particular Java language. It's like a one dimension, two dimensions, like a three dimensions, four dimensions. So based upon the dimensions, we are going to create the arrays internally. And basically the arrays concept, it is used to store the multiple values. Those are having the same data type here. Okay, we'll identify how we are going to discuss about the different example inside this particular arrays here. So after this, we'll try to discuss about the operators here. What are the different types of operators we are going to use here? So if we observe, like, mainly we'll focus on the arithmetic operators, as well as the some of the ternary operator is very important, because in the all the real-time applications we'll focus more on this particular ternary operator. So along with this particular ternary operators, we'll try to cover up the some of the relational and assignment operators here. Okay, so after this, now we'll try to move on to the loops concept. Like, we'll try to discuss about the control statement, like how we can come up with the if conditions and else condition, getting the point. So based upon the some conditions, we'll try to use the if and else here. Along with that, we'll move on to the switch cases. Like, along with the switch cases, we'll move on to the some of the loops. Like, whenever we are trying to iterate, like whenever we want to get the one by one value. So the concept we are going to use as a loop concepts here. We'll try to discuss about the different types of loop concepts, how we are going to use internally. And after this, we'll discuss about the classes information, because in Java, if I want to write single program or if we want to develop the application, it starts with the class. So without the class, you are not going to write a single line of statement here. So now you can understand how much this particular class is important here. Okay, so this particular section will try to discuss more example, like how we can define the classes, what are the data types we can define, and what are the syntaxes we can follow, like creation of the constructors, methods, variable declarations, and variable initialization. So everything we are going to discuss here. Okay, now you can think here, this particular section is very important. So once we completed this particular classes section, now we'll move on to the inheritance here. How this particular inheritance is going to work internally, what are the different types of inheritance we are having, and we'll try to cover up with the one by one. So this inheritance, so the inheritance is one of the our object oriented principle here. So we need to understand how this inheritance internally it is going to work. Okay, so after this, we'll try to discuss about the packages and interfaces. What are the types of packages we can create, and why we need to create this particular packages information. Okay, so while using this particular package, how we can differentiate the name of the different classes here, and without using this particular package, what are the drawbacks we are going to have, we'll discuss about the packages. So same way, we'll try to focus more about the interfaces, how we can create the multiple interfaces, what are the syntaxes we need to follow, and later we'll discuss about the differences between classes and interfaces, how it is going to work internally, and earlier how it was worked, and now with the help of this particular latest versions here, how it is implemented. Okay, these are all the different information we are going to discuss inside this particular packages and interfaces. And coming back to this particular exception handling. So exception handling is one of the important here, because in the real-time scenarios, we are going to write a lot of exceptions here based on the validations. For example, if we want to provide the username with help of some lowercase characters or uppercase characters with some numbers, or if with a special characters, these particular sections we are going to handle this particular exceptions here. If the condition is not matched here based on our criteria, we can throw an exception. The exception will handle the user friendly message here, because as a user cannot understand what kind of the message we are going to get from the our application. So now what we will do, the user friendly message we are going to convert from the language message here. So basically we'll get the language related message that can understand only as a developer, but as a user we cannot understand what kind of the message exactly it is. So now what we will do, those kind of messages we are going to reconstruct with help of this particular exception handling. Okay, so now you can think here how much this particular exception handling is important. So using these particular keywords we are going to discuss about the how this particular exception line internally it is going to work. So now you can see we'll try to discuss about the try and catch. Along with this particular try and catch, we'll try to discuss about the throws and throws keyword. Finally, we'll discuss about the one of the important example on this finally keyword here. Okay, and after this, we'll try to discuss about the multi-threading programming. Basically, the multi-threading basically, whenever we want to allow the multiple users at a time. For example, we have one e-commerce application. So initially we are going to allow the like 10 or 15 users, but whenever we have some offers, like something is going on the some festival related section, now what we can understand here, so the users may increase here. Whenever the users are increased, our application cannot stop here. So the application, it should run how many users are like accessing our application. So the concepts we are going to implement with help of this particular multi-threading here. Okay, we have a different types of information we need to discuss inside this particular multi-threading. Now later, this is the one of the important the section we need to discuss about the generic. So generic, what exactly it will do? So basically, if whenever like without this particular generic concepts here, whatever the data type we are going to provide, we need to use the same data type here. Okay, so once this particular generic is introduced here, so based upon the requirement, based upon the data type, we can modify the data here. So it is like a the at runtime or dynamically we can modify the appropriate data types. Basically, data types is very important concept in our Java language. If you miss the data type, so you are going to get the exceptions here. Okay, but the particular section using this particular generic we can avoid. Whatever the data type we are expecting, we can modify with help of this particular generic concepts here. Okay, this generic, if you understand, you can easily understand the collection framework, because the collection framework totally it is focusing on this particular generic. Okay, now you can think how much this particular generic is important. And after this, now we are going to discuss about the string handling. Getting the point. So inside this particular string handling, we have a different types of classes like a string buffer and a string builder. Each and every class we have a specific method. The each method it is going to provide the different kinds of purposes here. Okay, now we will try to discuss about the one by one method, how it is going to work internally. Now you can imagine this string is also one of the important section in the day-to-day development here. Getting the point. So day-to-day development, we'll try to write the string related example, and we'll write the exception lining, and we'll try to implement on the so this particular generic here, and we'll try to discuss about the packages and interfaces. So these are all the very important concepts here, because in a once you are moving into the any organization, you are going to write this in the regular basis here. Okay, now you can think how much it is important. And finally, we'll try to discuss about the one of the important example and collection framework here, how this particular collection framework it is going to work internally. Okay, so here we have a different types of interfaces, and we'll try to discuss about the interfaces and the classes. What are the different classes are implemented, and along with that classes, what are the interfaces are implemented. Okay, now I'm trying to move about the Spring related concepts here. Observe carefully. In the Spring, we'll try to discuss about the important sections here, like what are the why the Spring is introduced here. So what are the drawbacks of the previous languages, or we can call it as the frameworks here. Okay, and we'll identify after identifying the previous drawbacks here. Later we'll discuss about the versions here, like what are the different versions we are having, like 2.4, 2.0, 2.5, and 3.2, 3.0, 4.0, and 5.0. So these are all the different versions we are going to discuss here. We'll see. So if I'm not following the exact versions here, what kind of the exceptions we are going to discuss here, getting the point. So we'll see these sections in the daily day-to-day sessions here, but observe, we'll try to cover up the all the versions. And after this, we'll try to discuss about the core technologies. What are the core technologies we are going to cover? Mainly the main IOC container. Without the container, we are not going to write single line of statement in our Spring framework. So now you can think here how much this particular container is important. So we have a two types of container. We'll try to cover up the one by one, how it is going to work internally. So along with the container, we are going to provide the much information about the bean creations, how these particular beans are created internally. What are the steps we need to follow to create a bean here? Getting the point. So basically in the Spring framework, we are not going to create any object, but we'll try to share the information to the container, what kind of the object we are expecting here. Okay, so to perform the various operations, what kind of the object we need. So those information we are going to provide with help of the XML configurations, as well as we are going to provide with help of the annotations here. Okay, if you're trying to develop any applications in the recent years, all the applications are developing in the annotations here. So in the legacy application, if you observe, they used to implement the application with the help of the XMLs, but XMLs are like it's going to give the performance wise is faster compared to this particular annotation, but we need to follow a lot of syntaxes to implement the application in the XML here. So the XML, it is going to increase if I are trying to write the lot of syntaxes inside the XML. Because of that, we have a different types of annotations. We'll try to cover up the annotations. So nowadays all the annotations based applications are developing here. Okay, now you can think here how much this particular annotations as well as XMLs are important here. Okay, so this is, we need to understand this particular core, and coming back to this particular dependencies, we need to understand the what are the dependency injections we have. So we'll try to identify the constructor dependency and setter based dependency inject. So this is very important here, because in any application you are writing or you're migrating or you're trying to write a simple program, everything is going to work with the help of this particular dependencies here. So either we need to follow the constructor or we need to follow the setter dependency injection here. Okay, we'll try to cover up with multiple example how this particular dependency injection is going to work internally. And after this, we'll try to discuss about the bean scope. What are the different types of scopes we have? And we'll try to cover up the one by one. What is the differences between each scope, how it is going to work internally. Okay, so as I explained here, we have a different types of annotations we are going to use it. So this is the introduction about the annotations here. But once we completed the Spring, we can easily understand what are all the different types of annotations we have and what is the purpose of each annotations here. Okay, so coming back to the resource here. So as of now, you cannot understand what exactly this resource will do. So basically, if you're trying to this particular resource, we are going to use inside the bean factory. Bean factory is one of the our container. So container is depending on this particular resource. We'll see with the example how this particular resource are going to use internally. Okay, so same thing like a validation. So validations basically, whenever you're trying to work with like a front end applications, the username should contain some characters or length of characters, uppercase, some lowercase. If you miss the particular pattern, we are going to throw the validations here. Okay, it's like a required fields we are going to maintain, like the required related information, as well as if the username is like exceeded the number of characters, whatever the characters we are going to provide. So in that case also we need to throw the validation messages here. Okay, so those sections will cover up under this particular Spring 3 validation. So now after this, we'll move on to this particular data access. Data access basically will try to connect with the databases to store the data, whatever the application we are going to implement it. Okay, so here we'll try to cover up with the different templates here, like one of the template like JDBC template. Later we'll discuss about the named parameter, and finally we'll discuss about the Hibernate. First, we'll come up with the basic introduction about the Hibernate, how it is going to work internally. And finally, we'll connect with Spring with Hibernate. So how the integration part we can do with the help of this particular Spring. So everything we are going to discuss inside this particular data access. And same thing now you can see, if you are trying to connect with the JDBC, these are all the different template we are going to use. And the same way, if you are trying to connect with the ORM related tools here, like Hibernate or JPA, how we are going to discuss. This is the different database frameworks we have. We'll try to discuss one by one. And later, and using this particular web services, email and JMS, we are going to send a notification related sections here. How the notifications is going to work internally with the help of this particular Spring. We'll discuss about this particular remote web services related sections here. And finally, we'll move on to the web. Web basically, it is a MVC related applications we are going to develop here. So inside the MVC, we'll write the like UI related frameworks as well as the backend related sections here. So everything it is going to integrated with the help of this particular MVC. So whenever we are trying to send in a request from the browser, so how it is going to communicate it to our application. From the application, how the data is going to store into the database. So everything we are going to discuss inside this particular web here. Okay, so inside the web, we have a different types of concepts we need to discuss one by one, how it is going to work internally. And after this, now what we will do, we'll move on to this particular dependency injection. Sorry, this is Spring Boot related concepts. So up to this, we'll try to discuss about the Spring. So any questions? Any questions on the Spring? Okay. So now we'll try to discuss about the Spring Boot here. Spring Boot, basically, it is an advanced concept based on this particular Spring. So we'll discuss what are the drawbacks we have inside this particular Spring. So why they introduce the Spring Boot here. So most of the cases in the Spring, only the major drawback here, configurations here. What are the application we are going to develop here? First, we need to configure. The configuration is going to take lot of time because the Spring, we need to add a lot of dependencies here. Dependencies basically, so one application, it is going to depends on the other application. So those applications we are going to use as a jars here. So if you miss any one of the version, so the application is not going to run. Okay, this is the main drawbacks we are going to get from the Spring framework. And to resolve this particular drawback here, Spring Boot is introduced. Getting the point. So using this particular Spring Boot, we are not going to focus more on the configuration part, and we are going to focus more on the business logic. Getting the point. So once we integrate, like once we start this particular Spring Boot application, we'll try to focus more onto the developing the application, not on the configuring the application. So the configuration mainly, so it's not going to take much time. Once the configuration is completed, we'll try to focus more on the like what kind of the business we are going to develop here. Getting the point. So this is the main advantage we are going to get from this particular Spring Boot. So inside the Spring Boot, we have a different features we have. So we'll try to cover up the features, how it is going to work. Now you can see, first we'll understand the requirement of this particular Spring Boot. What are the requirement we need to develop the Spring Boot related application? And after this, we'll try to cover up the first application, how we can run the Spring Boot application. We have a different types of application, like the types of we can run the application, like command prompt we can run, and any IDE we can run here. So otherwise we can run from the jar here. So we have a different types. We are going to use one by one how we can run here. Okay, and after this we'll try to discuss about this particular build system. So here either we are going to discuss about the Maven or Gradle to build our applications by specifying the required dependencies here. And after this, we are going to discuss about so what exactly this particular Spring Boot annotation it is going to work internally. So what are the different annotations they are integrated internally when they are trying to implement this particular Spring Boot annotations here. And after this, we'll try to discuss about some of the features here, like something like a developer tool. So how we can run the automatic restarting, and we'll try to see the method injection, how it is going to work internally inside this particular Spring Boot here. Okay, now you can see the Spring Boot, basically most of the stuff automatically it is going to provide by the Spring Boot here. But when we are trying to develop the Spring related application, as a developer, we need to write all the code. If you miss anything, the application is going to stop. It will not run. So we need to resolve the particular exception, then only the application will run. So in the Spring Boot, the dependencies like what are the dependence versions we are going to use, automatically it is going to download it. So no need to worry about the dependency section. So this is the advantage we are going to get from this particular Spring Boot here. So as I explained here, we have some different types of features we are going to discuss. These features not available under the Spring framework here. Okay, now these are all the logging related frameworks. So logging, basically how we are going to use. So first one, we are going to discuss about the property file, and later we'll try to discuss about the logging is a different framework, and log format, and log back. We have three different logging frameworks we are going to use here to print the output. Like for example, if we develop the application, whatever the classes and method you are implemented, the methods and classes are executed, or what kind of the data we are storing into the database, how we are going to identify. In our real-time applications, we are going to use the logging framework. So with help of this particular logging frameworks only, we are going to debug our application. So why the application is stopped, and what are the issues we have in our application. So those information we are going to identify the logging framework. Okay, this is the logging framework is important. And here, so this section will discuss language conversion. Internalization is nothing but one language into another language. If we want to convert the messages, we are going to use this particular sections here. Now, if I want to convert English to France or English to Germany, any other country languages, we are going to use this particular internalization. So the messages are going to convert it into the particular country code here. Okay, so this is the internalization we are going to use, and JSON here. So JSON, basically whenever we are trying to integrating two applications here, this particular format we are going to use it to store the data into the each and every application here, because one application to another application, we are going to pass the data here. So the particular data, we are going to make the format inside this particular JSON here. So we'll see how this particular JSON it is going to work internally, and what are the annotations we need to use whenever we are trying to converting our Java object into this particular JSON format here. And so this same thing, we try to discuss about the Spring related concept with help of this particular Spring Boot, how we can implement this particular sections, the connecting the databases here. We have a different types of databases we can connect. As I explained, you can see the DDBT template, or you can work with the Hibernate, and otherwise we can move on to the NoSQL databases like MongoDB or the DynamoDB, how we can integrate with this particular Spring Boot here. Okay, each and every concept we are going to discuss with help of this particular web applications here. And finally, we are going to discuss about this particular web services. These are all the important section we need to understand here. The REST template is very important concept here. This REST template only, it is going to provide the information communicating the multiple applications. So for example, what are the different applications we are going to have here? Here, so this is one application one, and this is the application two. So from application one, now what I will do, application two, I'm going to communicate. This over the network communication is just going to happen with help of this particular REST template here. Getting the REST template is going to play important role to convert the one data type into one object into the another object. For example, here I'm trying to create what we can call it as a person related. So this particular person information I'm trying to store into this particular A2 application. Getting the pen. How we are going to use with help of this particular REST template, as a parameter, we are going to pass this particular person information. From this particular person, it is going to store into this particular A2. And here we are going to use one of the important concept to call JSON also. Internally, the object is going to convert it into the JSON format, and this particular JSON again, it is going to convert it into our Java object. Okay, so here we are going to use the same Java object here, and over the internet we are going to use this particular object is converted into the JSON, and the same JSON again it will convert it into the Java. So for example, this application is developed with the different technologies. For example, it is a Python. If it is developed in the Python, what happens internally? So the Python object now it will try to convert it into the JSON. Okay, the same JSON now it is trying to communicate it to this particular A2 application. But A2 application now it is implemented with help of our Java language. Now what happens internally? So using this particular JSON, we can easily convert it into the Java. But from the Python to Java, so it is difficult to convert the object here. But using that as a mediator, we can easily convert this particular section here. This is one of the important the format we are going to discuss here, how it is going to work internally. But now observe how this particular, now you can think how this particular REST template is going to play important role. Okay, after this we are going to discuss about the email, how we can send an email here, and finally we'll try to discuss about the like web services. So far REST template, like what is the web services we are having. So we'll focus on the REST related web services, because all the applications nowadays they are trying to discuss about the REST related web services, not the SOAP related here. Okay, these are all the Spring Boot related sections here. So any questions? Okay, so if we don't have anything, now I'm going to discuss about the microservice here, how this particular microservice is going to work internally. This is, we need to understand very clearly. So observe carefully what I'm doing here. So why the microservices are introduced here? Because if we observe, first they introduced this section called Spring here. So internally we have some other languages we have. So we'll discuss later regarding this, because these are all the deprecated. Now you can think here Spring is introduced from the Spring. So again, Spring Boot is came. So from the Spring Boot, now what happening here with the help of this particular Spring Boot. So whatever the functionality we have inside the Spring Boot, so while using this particular Spring Boot, they implemented one of the important section called microservices. Okay, so before this particular microservices, what are the approach we are going to follow? Something like a monolithic application. Monolithic application is nothing but we'll have a one database. Okay, so this is the one database we are going to use, and one application like one version control. Version control is nothing but either Git or SVN. Get in the pen. Either we are going to use Git or SVN. So what is the purpose of this particular Git or SVN? It will try to store the code. Whatever the code we are going to implement here, will push into this particular SVN or Git here. Now, if you observe, we have a different types of module. For example, this is the core module. Okay, so this is the core module, and you can see this is something like a product module. Okay, this is the different module, and now you can think this is the search module. Get in the pen. And another module we are going to discuss about the common module. This is the common module. And so another module, if it is an e-commerce application, we are going to write favorite. Okay, this is the one of the favorite module. Now, if you see how many modules we are having as of now, 5 modules. So these 5 modules now will push all the 5 modules code into this particular SVN. Okay, for example, in this particular common module, some changes are not yet implemented, or while running the application, some changes are not working. Okay, some changes are not working. Now what happens internally? This entire application, it is going to down. The entire application, even though the core service is running successfully, and along with the core service and product are favorited, these are all the remaining services, like remaining modules are running successfully, but all the modules are going to stop because of this particular common module. In the common module, we have some exceptions here. First, we need to fix this. And once we fix this, what is the next step? What we are going to do? We'll try to build the application. Once the application is built, and deploy the application. So once application is deployed, we are going to test in the different environments here. We have a different types of environments, something like we'll focus on the QA related environment. And later we are going to discuss about the UAT related environment, and finally we'll move on to the production related. Now you can see, so because of this particular common, now what we are doing here, we are trying to fixing the issue and building the application. Once the build application is completed, we are deploying into the different environment like QA, UAT, and production. So these are all the steps. These steps are going to repeated multiple times. These steps are going to repeated multiple times. For next time in the service, if you get any exception, so next time if you get any correlated exception, now what happening? The application, it's going to down. If you get any exception, the application will not work. Because of this particular some exceptions here, the application will down here. And the what happened basically, we are going to lose the business here. This is important here. So you can think here. So e-commerce application. So inside the e-commerce application, we have a one website here. Okay, here we are having the website here, something the user is trying to submit here. While submitting, he got an exception. Whenever he got an exception, he cannot move. He cannot move. Further, he cannot do the other actions. What happens here? First, we need to stop the server. Why we need to stop the server? We need to fix the issue first. Okay, once we fix the issue, again, these processes are same. This process we are going to make, and once we are completed this particular process, then this application will available to the users. So these are all the some business loss we are going to get whenever we are trying to implement the monolithic application. So because of this, one of the important concepts is introduced, something like we can call it as a microservices. So basically it is it is like one of the template here. Using this particular microservice template, we are going to develop the application. Now using this particular microservices, what we will do, so here as I suggested, core module. Okay, so core module will contain the different either, so it going to contain the get, or it going to contain the SVN. So this is the code related section, like whatever the code we are going to implement, we are going to push the code into either SVN or Git. Okay, and here for this particular core module, we are going to use the separate database. Getting the pen. So for this, we can go for the Oracle. Okay, and what I suggested another module, product module, and the same thing. This is also applicable here. Git and SVN, anything we can use it. And this particular DB, we can go for the anything like MySQL. Okay, so MySQL, and here, what is another one we can use it? So what I suggested, something like a common. Okay, this is the another one. Here, Git or SVN, anything we can go for. Same thing here also we can go for Git or SVN. And here, different database, something like a Postgres. Okay, Postgres we can use. And another service. So if we are having any other services like if it is a e-commerce application, we have a different. So same thing, like a core will be the same, and product will be the same, and common, if you are required, we can go for the common, otherwise we can delete. And we can go for the checkout related one service we can implement, and track related one more service we can implement, and transaction related we can implement one more service. Getting the pen. We have a different types of services we are going to implement in the real-time application. Now you can think here, each service we can come up with a different database, different version control systems here. And for example, if I have some issue here, if I'm having the issue only inside this particular core service, if I'm going to have an issue, only core service related service is going to down. Still, we can access this particular remaining services here. So this particular core service is not going to depend on the other services. Okay, so this is the main advantage we are going to get from our microservices here. Getting the point. So using the microservices, we can divide into the multiple modules. Each module can contain the different informations here. Okay, so this is the main advantage we are going to get from this particular microservices. And inside this particular microservices, we have a lot of features and a lot of information we need to discuss here. The main information, how this particular microservices, like you can see, these are all the monolithic applications, like what are the drawbacks we have. And we are going to discuss about the drawback first. Later, we'll try to discuss about this particular microservice introduction. And using this particular microservices, we'll identify the what kind of the architecture we are going to use internally. And after this, we'll discuss about the different services like Spring Cloud here. The Spring Cloud information is introduced inside this particular microservices here. Okay, now you can see this is the one of the Erico server, and the same thing like we are going to discuss about this particular consumer discovery. Like you cannot understand what exactly it is going to provide internally, but whenever we are trying to discuss about the microservices, we can easily understand the purpose of this particular each and every service, how it is going to work here. Okay, so these are all the different the informations we are going to discuss inside this particular microservices. And finally, I'm going to provide about this particular AWS. So AWS here, first we'll discuss about the what are the resource, like what are the different services AWS is going to provide, and how we can communicate the AWS with the Java development. Whatever the content is required to the AWS to develop the Java related AWS applications. So those sections we are going to discuss it. Now, if you see inside this particular AWS, what we can do with the help of this particular AWS, and later, now you can see the how much it is the cost and exploring this particular AWS services, and how we can create an account here, and how we can create an infrastructure inside this particular AWS. After completion of this, we'll try to use the EC2 instance and EKS instance. We have a different types of instance we are going to have. After this, how we can communicate the SDK. So this is the main time we are going to focus. So this SDKs are very important here. So to communicate the Java related application with the help of this particular AWS. So AWS is providing the own libraries here. Those libraries we are going to call it as a SDKs here. Okay, so using this particular SDKs, we are going to implement this particular applications here. Okay, these are all the AWS related. And finally, we'll try to close up with the help of this particular React.js. So React.js, inside the React.js, first we'll understand the DOM model, how it is going to work internally. And with the help of this particular React, how we can implement the small application. It's like a Facebook related application we can implement with the help of this particular React.js. Okay, so these are about our full stack training, what we are going to cover in our day-to-day sessions. Any questions?
Hello, sir. How many days it gonna take to complete the course, and and how much duration, and a daily classes is 1 hour, or it's how the course gonna go?
So like daily, we are going to discuss more than 1.5 hours. Like a Monday to Friday, we'll have a sessions here. So minimum, it is going to take 2 months. So maybe it's going to extend here. Based on our availability. We can, like if the course is it's going to pending something, we'll try to continue more than 2 hours, like 2 months. So you can
And
expect 2 months.
okay, and also actually full stack course means it should be also include the front end part too, right?
So front end for if I'm going to include, it is going to take a lot of time, and as a backend developer, it is not required. Basically, in the real-time applications, so if you are understanding this particular React.js, you can easily understand here how the HTML and how the CSS is going to work internally, and HTML and CSS how we are going to integrate it with the React.js. Okay, but as a backend developer, we are not going to develop the entire front-end related application. But in case if you think any missing, or if we want to provide the enhanced related functionality, so in that sections only we are going to implement the Java related, like the UI related stuff here, because we are fully busy with our backend development here. But why we need to learn this React JS here? So React JS basically, for example, where is the draw? Okay, so this is the one application. So now you can imagine Facebook related application. So here now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to click on the submit. But whenever we click on this particular submit, internally it is going to communicate it with our backend application. And here we need to understand the flow, what kind of the information it is missing, any exception we are getting, and what are the exception we are getting, and why it is we are getting an exception, what is the root cause here. Okay, and if we have any exception, but we'll identify the front end code, we'll fix the particular exception. Because your and some organization, they will give you the option to develop the front end related, and some other organization, they are not going to give the option to develop the front end here. But we need to be ready what kind of the organization we are going to get, and we need to develop the front end as well as back end here. But everything I'm going to cover inside this particular React JS, how we can develop the front end related applications here, and how we can integrate it with our back end here. So using the Spring or Spring Boot, whenever they are trying to submit, and whenever we are trying to return the data, how we are going to show in the UI pages here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so like, can we stop or can we continue the session? What is the next step?
Yeah, next step you can continue.
Okay, so if I want to continue, first we need to start with our core Java. So the core Java, basically, first we need to understand this particular, the features, whatever the feature I suggested here, we need to understand the core Java. Okay, so as I explained here, core Java, basically, it is coming from the C and C++ syntaxes here. So what are the C and C++ syntaxes we are going to use? From the C language, getting the point. So most of the data types, whatever the data types, if you are aware of the C language here, you can easily understand what is the data type and how the data type it is going to initialize internally. So we can easily understand, but other no problem. We'll try to cover up one by one how it is going to work. But just I'm sharing the information. Java language is taken the some of the syntaxes from the C as well as C++. From these two languages, they copy the syntax and they implemented the our Java language here. Okay, this is we need to understand here. So after this, we need to discuss about the features here. So before going to discuss about these particular features, now we need to understand the creation when this particular Java is introduced here. So this is important here. The Java is introduced in the 1991, getting the point. So the initial version, it is taken around 18 months here. Getting the point. So these are all the 5 people are implemented this particular Java language here. So this particular 5 people, so James and Patrick, so Chiris and Ed Frank and Mike. These are all the 5 persons they like implemented this particular Java language under the organization of Sun Microsystems here. Okay, now once this particular the initial version is released here, what happened here? So in the 1995, they renamed to this particular Java. So they are trying to focus more on the initially days on the like electronic related applications here, not on the internet related applications. So this is important here, electronic related devices. So the find out the performance about the devices here. If we want to scan, if we want to print something, so those applications they developed with help of our Java language here. Okay, now you can see what is the initial name of this particular Java. They provided as a okay, and so they renamed into this particular Java in 1995. So these are all the basic information we need to understand here. So who is the author of this particular Java language and when the Java is introduced here. So what is the name of this particular Java initially? Okay, after this, we need to understand this particular feature. So basically, if you know the syntaxes, Java is very simple, but mainly we need to focus on the syntaxes here. So the syntaxes, you need to understand very clearly how this particular syntaxes are going to work internally and what are the different types of syntaxes we need to follow. Okay, this is important. And after this, now if you observe, this is the one of the feature we are having simple that this particular feature, it is going to mainly on the syntaxes and secure here. So basically this Java internally, one of the important concept it is going to use something like applets here. So using this particular applets, we are going to get security here. Getting the point. So in any browser, if nowadays whatever the browser we are having inside this particular browser, applets are running. The applets will give you the more security here. So for example, if you are trying to providing the sensitive information, something like username or password, something any debit card related or bank related information. So this information it is going to capture by the our applets here. So because of this particular applets here, we are going to get more security here. And another one, what we can understand here, portability. So basically, the portability, how it is going to work internally, this is we need to understand here. The portability, it is going to give the application performance here. Getting the point. Now, if you're trying to develop the application here, getting the point. Now you're trying to develop the application should run in the all the days, even though the remaining services are upgraded with one version into the another version, we are not going to get any conflict here. It should run successfully. Getting the point. And along with this, internally, so it is going to take care of the threads and CPU memory, everything. It is going to understand by the particular feature called portability. Okay, so this is very important here because one application we developed here, the application, it is going to run in the all over the world. For example, you can imagine e-commerce application or any website here. Okay, anything you can select here. What happens internally as a user, we can access from the different countries. So this is the one country, this is the another country, from different countries and different network system as well as different computers here. Getting the point. So but still our application is going to run without getting any exception. The application it is going to run here. So this is the main advantage we are going to get with help of this particular portability here. Okay, even though different operating system here. So this will not focus more on the operating. It's going to work on the Windows or Linux, any whatever the nowadays operating systems are it's coming without getting any exceptions. Our application is going to run successfully. Okay, this is after this, as I explained here, object oriented. So as we discuss here, we have the main feature. This is object oriented here. We'll discuss about this particular object oriented later here, because everything we are going to write in our Java language as an object. Without an object, we are not going to write single line of code here. But as of now, we cannot understand what exactly the object it is going to contain internally. Okay, we'll try to cover out one by one session how it is going to work internally. But now you can imagine object oriented internally, whatever we are going to write here. So everything it will converted as an object. Based on the object only, we are going to run our applications. Okay, and so another one here, robust here. So security here. So this is also strongest application. Using this particular Java language, we can develop our strongest applications here. This is very important. How we are going to develop the strongest application. So using the different, what I explained here, exception handling and multi-threading collection framework. Okay, so using this particular important section, we are going to develop our strongest applications. And along with this, we have another important section, object to memory allocation and deallocations here. Whatever the objects we are going to allocate here, once the object is used, the object is going to destroy it from the memory locations here. Okay, these are all the four important sections we have in our Java language. Because of this, we are going to call it as our Java language is the strongest language. Otherwise, we can call it as a, using this particular features, we can develop the strongest applications here. Okay, this is important, another feature. So something like a robust. Now, as I explained, multi-threading. Now, multi-threading basically, so same thing it is going to applicable here. Now we can imagine any bank related application. So here we can see, so whenever we are trying to discuss about the bank related, at a time, how many users can access here? Getting the pen. For example, here I'm trying to providing the username and password here. So once I provide the username password, I'm going to provide the submit button. But you can see, so this is the user one and user two and user three. So user four and finally user five. We have a 5 user. They're trying to access on the same application. But whenever they are trying to access on the same application, they are going to get the same data. Getting the pen. So user one cannot get the user information about the user three. Okay, so user 5 cannot get the information about the user 2. So if they are going to get this particular information, what happens internally? So this particular bank, it is going to lose, or as a user, the user is going to lose. For example, in the user 1 account, we are having around 5,000 amount. Okay, 5,000 amount. So this particular 5,000 amount, if it's going to shown by this particular user 5, so user 5 is having around 50. Okay, he is going to get more benefit here. Getting the point. So these are all the some drawbacks we are going to have. But using this particular multi-threading, how many users are going to like access our application? So the user data is not going to share with any other user. Getting the point? Because all the users, they are not going to work. They're not going to have any dependency here. So all the users are having parallelly, they are going to like use our applications here. So this is the main important section we are going to discuss with the help of this particular multi-threading here. And so another important section, whatever I'm trying to discuss about this particular architectural neutral, this is basically OS related sections. Here, with the help of this particular Windows 7 or Windows 8, you are trying to develop the application. But in future, like in 1 month or 2 months, if you are trying to upgrade your operating system, even though if you're trying to upgrade this particular operating system here, whatever the existing application we developed with the help of the older version, we cannot get any exceptions here. Getting the point? We cannot get any exceptions. So this particular information, it is going to handle by the one of the this feature called architectural neutral here. Okay, this is important. We need to understand here. So any questions regarding this particular features, whatever we are having? Okay, now we'll try to discuss about the versions here. Getting the point? These are all the up to 1.8. We are going to discuss this particular Java, core Java related versions here. So once you are familiar with 1.8, you can easily understand the upcoming versions like 9, 10, 11, whatever the versions we are having, we can easily understand what are the enhancements are happened in the latest versions here. But up to this particular versions, we are going to focus one by one how it is implemented internally. Okay, now you can see most of the stuff 1.20 and 1.21, most of the stuff are same here. Only minor changes they implemented, but now you can see the naming conventions also implemented here. From the 1.2, they provided as a J2SE. Okay, the name of the Java language they used to call as a J2SE, something like Java 2 Platform Standard Edition here. Getting the point? So don't confuse this because based on the versions here, they provided the naming conventions here. And whatever the information they provided here, they're having Swing and collection framework here. They introduced the Swing and collection frameworks inside this particular 1.2, and inside the 1.0 and 1.1 also we have a collection framework. So those section we'll call it as a legacy classes here. But 1.2, from the 1.2 onwards, whatever the collection frameworks they implemented, still we are using those particular collection framework classes and interfaces here. So this is the important information they implemented, and along with this they remove the some of the methods here. The suspended method remove, like a resume and stop method, they remove from the thread class. So if you see this particular method will not available inside this particular thread class here. Okay, you cannot understand what exactly it is contained here because these are all the some enhancements happen in the 1.1, 1.2 from onward, they implemented some other changes here. Okay, 1.3. So in the 1.3, we don't have the major changes here. So we have some minor changes here that is not required here. But now you can see in the 1.4, we have a exception information as well as input and output informations here. Okay, file input stream and file output stream related example, they introduced this particular 1.4 onwards here. Getting the point? So as I explained here, exception handling, the exception handling inside the exception handling, some of the additional information added inside the 1.4. So what is the biggest change here? 1.5. Okay, 1.5 is the biggest change and 1.8 is the biggest change. And later 1.11 is the biggest change. So remaining are the minor changes here. We can easily understand what are the changes are happened. But 1.5 and 1.8, sorry, 5 and 8, 11. These are all the main important here. Okay, so up to these two, we are going to discuss what are the major changes we have. And once you are familiar, you can easily understand what are the 11 changes we are having here. Okay, so now you can see in the 1.8, we have a different the like Lambda expression, Stream API, Java util packages, and default implementation, and some of the functional interfaces. And the same thing inside this particular 1.5. So the main concept generic they introduced here, and they come up with annotations. Whatever the annotations I explained in the demo session, the Spring related, the Spring annotations are they introduced with help of this particular syntax, annotation syntax. If you open any annotations internally, they implemented with help of the Java standard syntaxes here. Okay, and later they come up with auto boxing and auto unboxing here. So if you are familiar with the data types here, we can easily understand this auto boxing and auto unboxing, how it is going to work internally. Okay, and we'll discuss about the var concept and static info import here. Okay, so so far you cannot understand what are the this particular enhancements are happen in the each and every version, but day to day you can easily understand here. So once you come back to this particular initial version, the class what we are discussing now, you can easily understand what we are going to discuss in the day-to-day sessions here. So generics, what exactly the generic will contain, and what exactly the annotations we are going to implement here, and what exactly the auto boxing and auto unboxing will contain internally. So we'll try to cover up the one by one. You can easily understand once like 10-15 days the classes are completed, you can go come back to the whatever we are discussing the recorded session. You will get to know how this particular sections are implemented internally. Okay, so these are all about the versions informations, and we discuss about the features informations. So any questions here?